Hi, everyone. We're near the end of our current series of conscious aging for this season. We'll be back in the fall, though. And right now, the peach blossoms are already beginning to fall here in central Italy. It's spring. I'm Mark Davenport, and
I'm Heidi Hörnlein,
Yeah.
and we are both representing the Wisdom Factory.
yeah, okay. But before we introduce our special guest today, Pascale Tremblay, uh, just say hi, Pascal, so people can see you on the screen.
She has to.
Oh, you have
Oh,
to.
I just show her. So, okay, I
There
showed
you go.
you because you were muted. We go ahead with the introduction
Yeah.
and then we hear you.
Come back for more. Yes, okay. She is very well versed in using singing in her work with dementia patients and other people, including older people. She helps them to be heard. And it's often the case, of course, with older people that they're spoken over, they're ignored. That's the problem older people have. But a strong voice can minimize that effect. And singing can promote that strong voice. All right. Uh, Henry Ford said once in another context that if you believe you can, or if you believe you can't, you're both right. So the question is, do you believe you can sing, or do you believe you can't sing? But now a few words about the show.
Yeah, first of all, to your introduction, everybody can sing. And so I think we will talk about that later.
Mhm.
In case you are watching this now on YouTube, you please come over to the website, thewisdomfactory.net, Pascale / Pascale-Tremblay. And this is her personal website, and you find the transmission there and also a way to leave your comments. And please interact, ask your questions. We will monitor them. We are in the conscious aging series, as Mark said. We have had, 10 or more episodes in this season. And if you want to go there to the program page, you find the previous and the last two speakers in bit.ly/conscious aging with C of conscious big and A big from aging. Please recognize that there's an E after the G. And if you're interested in being notified for future episodes in conscious aging, there are still two. Then there is a panel discussion, and then there will start a new season in autumn. Then please go and register at bit.ly/conscious aging with all small letters.
Yeah.
I think that's more or less all what we wanted to say.
I think we should have someone in our audience repeat those directions.
And see if they got that, if I spoke right. Okay, let's talk about singing. First of all, I want to tell who might not know it, I'm here a show host, but actually I was a classical singer for many, many years and a singing teacher, voice teacher. I call myself more a voice therapist. And you know, singing is such a great thing. And people who say they can't sing, it's just not right. Because when you are born, you sing first and then you speak. And now we come over to our guest and ask her how she came into being interested in singing.
Yeah.
You need to unmute yourself.
All right.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. So I came to being interested in singing from a scientific perspective. In fact, I do not sing. My mother thinks I sing poorly. In fact, horribly is what she says most of the time. But I know that I could learn if I wanted to.
Yes.
I've always been working, so I'm a scientist and I work at Université Laval in Quebec City, and I've always been studying speech production and voice production. So how the human brain allows us to speak, articulate, and produce voice as well. And then I became interested in aging. And I spent many years studying how these faculties change with age. And then I became interested in looking at something a bit more positive. That is, are there things that we can do to slow down or limit the effect of aging on voice and speech, and even more largely communication, because that includes more than voice and articulation. And so singing, because it's so close to speaking, right? It uses the vocal tract, and it uses the lungs, and it uses not all the same parts in the brain, but some of them are shared. And so working on one behavior can have an impact on another. This is something that we know from scientific research. So I became interested in looking at how singing can help us age more positively, if you will. And in my lab, we're also interested in looking at how singing can help aphasic patients recover speech after a stroke.
That's very interesting. First, I want to say you really can learn to sing, because I found it in my teaching career. Let's say there are so many people who have been told that they sing horribly, but you know it's normally not true, because when you are told that thing too early in your life, you miss out the practice. We know from developmental theory, that up to, let's say, 12 years old, you are not interested in being together with a group, being with a peer group. You just do something and you sing like you want to sing. And if it's in tone or not, you are just not interested. And then the teachers say, you sing wrong. Oh, something wrong with me. But what is it? And so you carry this I cannot sing for your whole life unless you find somebody who teaches you that you can.
You're taking me back to 7th grade.
Yeah. And I realized when I worked with people who say they cannot sing, that the main thing is they are so in stress needing to sing because somebody would listen and would judge them, so that they don't even listen. So they cannot even hear the pitch, what is out there to join in. And so they have first to learn to listen, and then then to learn to sing, and it is really possible for everybody. And not only for you, but also for older people.
That's right. I work with a professor of choir singing at Université Laval here, and she told me that she can teach me anytime I want. And she says the same as you, that everybody can learn. I mean, we can't all become professional, but we can all enjoy ourselves. And that really is the point. And for me, professional singing probably has more effects than amateur singing. But what I'm interested in is really the amateur forms of singing, because I think that's the one that's accessible to everyone. And if we want to develop means to sort of help people age in the more positive ways in certain aspects of their life, then I think we need to target the activities that are more easily accessible.
Yeah.
So that's why we've been working on choir singing. Mostly our protocols are we've been recruiting people to sing in groups, non-professionally, and having them come to our lab and spend 3 wonderful hours of being tested for just about everything.
So you have them sing, or how does it work, the research?
So the project that we have ongoing right now is it's a large project. We want to recruit 130 people. We are at the moment at 110 approximately, so it's going well. We were interested in communication, so we are recruiting half singer, half non-singers, half of them female and half of them male, ranging from 20-year-old to 100-year-old if we can find people that old, and then we ask them to produce a bunch of voice tasks, but we are interested in the speaking voice. So we make them produce vowels the highest and the lowest that people can, in terms of intensity, but also pitch, to see what their capacities are in terms of pitch and intensity and duration of sound production. But we also make them talk. We make them repeat syllables that are varied in complexity to see if, because the hypothesis that I have is that singing has a broad impact on communication, not just on voice. And so we make them produce syllables to evaluate articulation. We make them produce syllables, either very difficult syllables, and in a second task, we make them produce syllables as quickly as they can to examine speaking rate. We also make people tell us stories, because we want to evaluate, and I think you're going to think that this is interesting, given your background in singing, because one of the other hypotheses that we have is that singing may help people with their speaking prosody, that is the ability to express emotion through voice. We know that in aging, this ability goes down a little, and so we think that it may be the case that singing will help with that. So we ask people to tell us a story that's neutral, the day before, for example, if nothing happened special. And then we ask them to tell us the most pleasant moment they've had recently, as well as the saddest moment that they have had. And then we record them, and then we can analyze their voice in terms of prosodic variation, that is, change in intensity, change in pitch, change in duration of sound, and various parameters. And then we... That's not over. That said, it's 3 hours. It's a good 3 hours. And then we make them read a passage. So it's a written document that they have to read. So that allows us to analyze their continuous speech, sentences and everything. And then we ask them to do a few cognitive tasks. So we measure attention, auditory attention. Another hypothesis that I have, and this is based on the literature, the scientific literature on music. We know that music has a very broad impact on the human beings as they age, a very positive one.
Not only as they age,
yeah, of course, exactly, throughout life.
I'm waiting. Yes.
It has an effect, of course, on auditory perception, because it's a musical. Playing an instrument is a musical activity, but it also has impact on cognition. People, when they age and then they play an instrument, their memory capacity are maintained, and verbal working memory, that's the ability to remember information in short-term memory while you're doing a task or while you're having a conversation, for example. They also are better at perceiving speech and noise, and this is something that's very detrimental with aging, is that older adults very often have a difficulty in processing speech in noisy environments. That's very unfortunate, because life is always noisy. So in restaurants, in the streets, in the bus, there's always a noise, right? So and so the idea with singing is that it may have some of these effects as well. So that's what we wanted to test. So this is why we're measuring attention in the lab when they come, and we also measure verbal working memory. And then in the second study, because that's not after the 3 hours, there's another hour.
Oh, poor guys.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we want to be thorough,
But let me ask you first. How do they react? Are they getting under stress, or how do you make it pleasant for them, that they don't get, oh God, I cannot?
I have the chance of working with very nice young people in the lab that are very wonderful with the participants, and they make them comfortable, and they know there's really no right or wrong answer. The point is, we just want to know what's happening when people age, and ultimately we want to help people find ways to age more positively. So I think knowing what the goal of the study are, and being in our environment where people are nice and friendly, and of course it's long, but people can take breaks and they can ask questions, and everything is very much explained to them. So it is long, but because of this environment, usually they feel comfortable. Many of them come back for multiple studies, in fact.
Good.
We're very lucky that we have very good participants of all ages.
That's great. They like it then, or they wouldn't be back. Obviously.
Exactly. So the one last thing. Sorry.
You come back too.
You come back too. Yeah. We have interrupted her. Let her go on.
Oh, sorry. No, it's me. I was just gonna say the one last thing that we make them do is that we make them come to the lab for an MRI scan. So we want to study their brain. This has always been the goal of my research, to understand how the brain works, allowing us to produce voice and speech. We know that the brain ages tremendously, and some of my work has shown that the brain aging has an impact on speaking. So the idea is that singing probably has an effect on the brain, making it age more slowly or even less. And then that in turn may be why there are those cognitive and behavioral advantages of singing. And so that's why we have them in the MRI machine, so that we can study their brain and then draw a relationship between the brain and the behavior that we measure in the lab.
That is so interesting. I would love to see what is happening in the brain when people sing.
Yeah, me too.
Do you have recordings of that?
Like I said, in this study, we don't make them sing. We make them speak. But it's also the structure of the brain that we want to study. Like we know that with age, some structures of the brain decline. And so we know that some of these decline are associated with change in cognition or behavior. And so some of the things that we do in the machine is just that when people lie there not doing anything, we acquire an image of the gray matter and also the white matter. This is the part of the neuron that carry information from a place to another in the brain. And so we want to see if decline in the white matter and in the gray matter is associated with some of the changes in communication and aging, and if these changes are reduced in singers.
That is really interesting. Yeah. I know about studies, but I cannot tell you who and where, that is research that singing has a positive effect on the brain and getting on the connection of both hemispheres, and playing a musical instrument for sure. Not only for old people. I don't know Alfred Tomates. Do you know him?
Doesn't ring a bell.
He is French, and I think you should get in touch with his work, because he has done a lot of studies about singing and about hearing. And not only that, but especially wanted to say about the development of people in school, young children. They did 7 years research where they took off 1 hour of subjects every day in the school, and instead they had a music instrument lesson every day. And so in fact they had 6 hours less subject lessons, and at the end in the exams in the week. In the exams they were always better than the others who were only studying the subject. So doing music is incredibly important, but school systems still pretend to not know. Probably they don't. Anyway, I recommend to you Alfred Tomates.
I'll write it down. Probably I don't know it because it's developmental. I know more of the adult literature, but I'll have a look certainly, because it's.
He has created what is later being called the Mozart effect, something like that. You know.
Okay, I'll write it down. I'll check it out. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's originally French, so it should be easy.
Yeah, for me. I'll look it up. So there's lots of positive effects known from playing an instrument. There is a bit less research on singing in terms of aging and in terms of brain aging in particular. It's more of a new field. But one of the studies that I like, it's on music, but it shows that so this researcher developed an algorithm that can sort of tell you the age of the person from looking at their brain. and it says that the brain of an older singer looks a lot younger than people of the same age not singing. So really does seem to have a very positive, both biological and of course emotional and psychological effect on people. So I really learn, I guess.
Yeah, and it is much more accessible because you can sing. Yeah. Everybody can sing, really. And if it is a song, a children's song or whatever, everybody knows something. While, for instance, as far as I know, playing piano is one of the most complicated tasks. And even playing organ, where you have to use even the 2 feet independently from each other, most difficult task for the brain. So this probably in old age you wouldn't begin to learn. But singing,
singing you can, exactly.
Yeah.
You go together with 3 or 4 other people and begin to sing, you know.
It's in everybody's memory.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's also good for the memory because of learning the songs, exactly. And so that's why it's probably have an effect also on memory capacities in aging, at all ages. But I'm saying aging because I mean this is an aging show, and also because my research focuses more on aging. But I think anything that I have said that is positive about singing applies to, I mean, people at any age, really.
Yeah, and I can tell you a story. When I was teaching people, for instance, one woman was a teacher in the school, and she had a problem with discipline in the school. And we did 3 or 4 years of singing, and her voice developed really strong. And she said, now when I do a shout out, people, And that's only by developing your voice, you know, and you gain authority, because before you were not heard. And women, when they want to be loud, they scream, they go up and down.
Right.
Like to say, nobody will listen to that.
That defeats the purpose, yes. That's true. It comes with more confidence as well when you have a more confident voice. That's right. It has lots of positive impacts on, but of course we need more studies, and that's one of the points that I want to make today. Is that the only issue that I see with this topic is that people say, yeah, of course, yes, it's true. I mean, it makes sense. It's not surprising. But we need to show it empirically, though, because it's the only way that we will get. But first of all, we don't. It is possible. Different types of singing have different advantages, and if we want to use it therapeutically, we need to know exactly what type of singing has what impact. Is there a time course for it? Like, can you have the benefit at any age? Do you need to have to have been singing for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and what's the frequency at which you should be singing to get these impacts? What is the intensity at which you should be singing? You need to scream, or is it okay if you sing softly? So when people come, we also ask a lot of questions about what they do when they sing, and to be able to get into the study, they have to have been singing for at least 2 years, at least an hour continuously each week. Otherwise, we don't consider that. Well, they are singers, but we don't consider them regular enough singers. Because this is a concept that's called age-dependent plasticity. So the brain changes with experience. I mean, we all know this, but it takes some amount of experience before it changes. And we don't know what this number is at all right now. So that's why I think it's still important, even though it makes sense to a lot of people. But even if something makes sense generally, we still need to show the details of it scientifically, and this is what we'll use eventually to convince the governments or the hospitals and the professionals to incorporate it in maybe in the classroom, but also more so in rehabilitation centers and in many different places. In Quebec City, we're working on a project for an Aphasic choir, but it's very surprising that there is not more of these. If singing is so beneficial, but what these institutions want to know is, I mean, what are the evidence that it works, right? If I invest money in this activity, what is the return? So we need to have the numbers. We need to know. So I think scientific research on this topic is still very important, especially singing, because there's been a lot less than music playing.
Yeah, music therapy we know about, and it has taken a long time to be accepted.
Yeah. Yes,
I remember.
Exactly.
But and singing has more. It is more intimate. And so an instrument, you can drum and whatever, but it's not you, the instrument. And singing is you, the instrument, which is in some way more difficult. On the other way, more beneficial, because you get to learn about yourself. And by singing, you also strengthen your body, because you have to learn somehow, or by chance or directly, how to use your breath, how to use your body muscles in a good way, so that you don't lose your voice after 10 minutes of singing. And so it is so how do you say compound? No, compound. It's so rich of benefits in my idea. So I would love to be there and help you to research, because I'm very much a researching mind, but I could do it only by experience, observe things and know it on myself and on the students. So
Pascale, can you tell that she spent quite a bit of time teaching singing?
Yes, you can tell. She knows a lot.
I could immediately do a session with you and tell you that you have a perfect voice and get it out. Part of what I'm doing is to make people comfortable. And even those who say, oh, I never sing. I had people coming to a course who said, I come only if I don't have to sing. I say, yeah, you come, you don't have to sing. And then I made them sing without them even noticing, coming from speech,
I see, a progressive introduction. Well, I hear you would like to be here, and I see the flowers behind you, but just so you know, here it snowed today, so I'm not sure that you want to be here.
Maybe not.
That's really the only problem with Canada.
Yes, it's a big one, though.
Yeah.
So,
excuse me.
I think I just need to take the time to learn. But I remember this professor that I work with, the choir professor. She also says that every time she's sort of upset or disappointed or something, feeling some negative emotion, she sings to herself. That makes her happy. So I thought that she was maybe exaggerating. So I tried, and I noticed it actually works.
Great.
It's very scientific, but sorry?
Privately, though, right?
Oh, yes, of course, privately.
In the shower. In the car.
In my car. Or I close the door of my office and then I can do it. Or at home and there's nobody. So this is the study that we've been doing, but we've done others. We have a study that we published maybe 2 years ago, and in that study, we only looked at voice in aging and in singers and non-singers, and we did show that voice quality and stability, of course, it declines with age. That's well known. It becomes more unstable, both on the intensity and pitch, and the quality also declines. Of course, not for everyone, but for a lot of people. And we showed that this wasn't so much the case at all for the singers. And if you want me, I can show you just a little figure of this.
Before I want to ask you, did you check their breathing capacity and their breathing habits? Because I'm quite sure it depends on that people begin to breathe just this little bit, and how can a voice come out?
It's a good point. We didn't in the first study. And in the second, it was originally in the protocol, but the protocol was so long that we had to cut something. And the next time around, we will do it. It's just that beyond 3 hours, we feel it's not very human. It's that 3 hours is the threshold, I think. But in the tasks that we make them do, if people have an issue with breathing, usually we will notice and we will interrupt them and make them start again. So especially in the voice task, when we only ask them to produce a vowel, either the longest they can, and that sort of measures phonation time, we call it, but it's a measure of breathing capacities as well, right? Because people with better breathing capacities can hold a vowel for a lot longer. And we also screen people out. This is why recruitment sometimes is difficult, because, you know, when you study aging, you want to be sure that what you're focusing on and narrowing onto, it really is the behavior that's of interest to you. So you have to eliminate people based on a lot of different issues that they might have. So gastric reflexes is a reason for exclusion from the study. Breathing problems, definitely, and seasonal allergies, when people come in and, you know, they really can't breathe or talk, so they can't do this study. Asthmatic people can do the study, but only if they're in good shape. Like if they're in a crisis, they can't participate. So they have to be stable at the moment that they do this study. Sort of makes recruitment harder and harder, because gastric reflex, I didn't know that, but my team and I learned this year. It's extremely common here, at least. And, you know, gastric reflexes, they have a negative impact on voice. So we have to exclude all of these people. What's surprising is that the young people have a lot of that problem, and I thought it was age-related, but
maybe it's food related, food habit related.
yeah, I think that probably explains a lot of it.
It's related to the use of thumbs. Yeah.
It's because it's so common. I mean, it's my team and I. We're like, at the end of at the beginning of recruitment, we thought it was not going to be the biggest issue, but it is the biggest issue in recruitment right now. I would say 1 person out of 2 who calls, or 1 out of 3, has some level of gastric reflex problem, and they are taking medication for it. In North America, people take a lot of medication, though. I think it may be the same or becoming the same in some European countries as well. But here, people take medication even before sometimes they're sick, as a prevention. So when we exclude people based on medication they take, we exclude lots of people.
This is a completely different problem. The medication, over medication, that we die of taking too many drugs.
Too many pills. So, it's we used to, when I first became a professor, it was 7 years ago. I arrived here and I thought I was going to do the purest aging study, taking only people not taking any medication. Well, you know what? There's 3 of them in Quebec City. You really cannot do that. You have to live with some level of medication. Otherwise, there's just nobody. There's just nobody. Between cholesterol and, you know, blood thinning medication, or I don't know, anything goes. Like antidepressants, a lot of them also. And so we exclude people that have any kind of active psychological or psychiatric issue, only because we want to be sure that what we're studying isn't the effect of that on the voice, but the effect on the speech and on cognition, but really the effect of age. So we spend about an hour with people on the phone trying to determine if they can participate. So going through a series of criteria and questions, and then we decide if they can come in. So it's you know, if you calculate that hour plus the 3 hour plus the MRI, it's really a 5-hour study.
Oh yeah, yeah. And for you even more preparing.
Preparing. It's also analyzing, really analyzing all of the data. So it's a lot of work, because we need to you know, go through all the signal that we have recorded, basically clean it up, you know, chop it down, and then run analysis to extract a lot of parameters to see if, you know, what exactly works. Also, even in aging, there's, so our projects always have sort of the dual goal. We want to see how age affects communication. And we want to see if we can find moderators for this, like things that you can do that will slow down aging. And even the effect of singing on communication and aging, the effect of aging on voice, some of it is very well described, but some of it is still a bit controversial because it depends on who you study sometimes. If you have a small sample and if people are very old or not very old, if you study people that are in the 70s, I mean, this is young nowadays.
Thank you.
Yeah. The young students, they come in the lab and at first they think a 40-year-old is old. And then by I would say 6 months, they have a whole different perspective on life because they see so many older adults, like up to 85, 90, and we've had up to 97-year-old women who came to the lab once, and they see that you can be super active and super healthy at that age, and so they learn a lot about life from being in this lab, because exactly you start off thinking 40 is and 50 is the end, but it really isn't. And
it was the end. I'm sorry.
Also, people are very active nowadays, right? They have activities, and a lot of them, we have no problem finding older adults who sing because there's so many choirs in Quebec City, but right now there is more choirs for older people than younger. So we're struggling more with finding the young choir singers.
This is good because I remember about 20 years ago or so, when I was still in Germany, there was this perfectionism thing, and people who were already 65 or something had a difficulty to be admitted in the choir because they were considered,
Really?
Yeah. I don't know how it is now, but I really do think it was not a good idea. I knew a woman who sang in my choir and went back to Germany and said, I don't find anybody who wants me.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's very unfortunate. I don't think here there's this problem because we recruit a lot of people from 60 to 85 that sing in a choir. Mm-hmm. Because it's not about the performance and the way, it's about the experience, I think. People have fun and they enjoy themselves, they make friends, and of course they have all these other benefits, but that's not even why they do it. They just do it because they like it, no matter whether they sound perfect or not.
But we're talking about Germans,
that was Germans. Yeah, it depends on the values, no? Why a choir master creates the choir. If they want to make a career for themselves as the perfect choir master and the best choir and go to competitions, maybe a 79-year-old person might not be the adapted, the right person. But if you want to have fun, and you can have a lot of fun in choir, then it's right. You go.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, I mean, I've listened to some of them, and they sound good. I mean, I think, maybe they don't sound perfect, but it's not the reason why you go see a choir anyway. I think it's really because of the emotions and of the social aspects of it, and
absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Also, older adults, they have more time to invest some time in it. They'll be serious. They'll be very serious about it. I mean, I don't know what it is in. Well, Italy, a little bit, because I lived in Italy for a year, but but not in the south, in the north. But here, older adults, they have a lot of activities. They're busy. It's fun. It's fun to see that they, they sort of enjoy their retirements and they do stuff. It's funny because that's the other thing that the young students learn. I mean, I've learned that too, but now I know for many years I'm not that young anymore, so I can talk about the students. Mm-hmm. It's that at first they think that recruiting older adults is going to be easy because they're at home, but they're not at home. They do stuff, and it's great to see.
That's actually because we initiated this series to inspire people who think when they are old they have to stay at home, maybe with the grandchildren. That's but nothing else. Mm-hmm. And we want to inspire them that there is so much more to be.
There's a lot more, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't know how I ever found time to work. Tell the truth.
Oh, that's a good one. I don't know how I can find time to sing in a choir. I think that's why I haven't even tried, but I should. I know I should. Now I have two people that can help me if I decide, you and the professor.
Yes, please do, because if you do the research, you should try out how nice it is. You know.
No, I'm sure it is, and knowing what all the benefits, I can certainly invest some time in it. Yeah. So we have, but I just wanted to say, I guess I can give you the address of my website if people want to ever look at the work that we've been doing, because we put all of our articles online for free, so people can just download them. Good. So it's www.speech, SPEECH, neuro, NEURO, lab, LAB.
Speech Neuro Lab.
.ca.
I'm quite sure I have published it in the.
Yeah, I think I sent the link to you before.
I think I have published it somewhere.
So all of our research is there, and we've been working on a chapter reviewing this evidence on the benefits of singing in normal aging, as well as in Parkinson's disease and aphasic patients. So we'll put it online very soon, as soon as it's officially published. We haven't spoken about much about aphasia and Parkinson's disease, but it seems to have an impact as well on these patients. It's I don't know if you're familiar with it, probably. So there's choral singing, but another thing that's been tried in the literature is singing-based therapies. So these are interventions that are developed based on some of the aspects of singing, like rhythm and intonation. So for aphasia, it's usually called melodic intonation therapy. So really it's a therapy that tries to reteach people speaking based on singing.
It's great. I have a personal interest in that because I have a brother who's suffering from Parkinson's, still
Parkinson's disease.
Yes.
Does he have voice and speech issues?
I've talked with him recently on the phone, and there was some slowness, but he spoke distinctly, and he completed the thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was because Parkinson's disease doesn't affect people exactly in the same way all the time, but for many Parkinson's disease patients, voice strength is reduced a lot, so that can make communication more difficult. And many of them have dysarthria, which is a disorder of articulation. So that makes the speech blurry and slow and difficult to understand. And that's why there's also been therapies for Parkinson's disease patients based on music. It's not music, it's not singing per se, but it's aspects of singing incorporated into therapies. So we have this project that we will know soon if we have funding to do it, but we want to create a choir. I said it before, I said about aphasia, but in fact we will include, we will do it with rehabilitation centers, and we'll include everyone that wants to participate. People healthy and people with aphasia, but also Parkinson's disease or anybody, because we will only measure the effects on aphasic patient for now. But we think that there's a benefit to having a choir for everyone, so we'll accept anyone in a choir. Also, the more people that there is, I think the more beneficial, more agreeable the experience for people. Yep.
So people who are watching this, if you live nearby, go to apply for the choir.
Or you can also come to the lab. We still, especially like right now, we have, it's always the case. It's not just right now. For all of our aging projects, the aging group, the age group that's the most difficult to find are the 40 to 60-year-old.
They're busy. They're busy. Yeah.
Most of them have children, relatively young, or at least still schooled. So and they work. So they're the most difficult to find.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And so we're trying. It's we always make it in the end because we're very perseverant.
Good.
We try until we succeed. So there's this other disorder that's called apraxia of speech. It is a disorder of speech motor planning, and it's we think it might also benefit from the singing-based intervention for communication.
What is that?
I didn't know it. No.
Apraxia of speech. It's a disorder. It's a neurological disorder that is often concomitant with aphasia, but it affects speaking at a more motor level than aphasia. Aphasia is a disorder of language, right? So even in a non-fluent aphasia, it isn't an articulation problem. It really is more a problem of finding the words and executing the commands for the word. But apraxia is at the level of planning the movement of the articulator, so the tongue, the maxillary, the mandible, and the lips to speak. So it's a motor disorder of speech, and so this is something that we also want to look at. So I have a new student in my lab that is starting a master thesis, and she will study the effects of the melodic intonation therapy. So this is the singing-based intervention on patients with either aphasia or apraxia of speech, to see if the effect is different. We think it's going to be stronger for apraxia because the disorder is really motor in nature, and singing is a motor behavior. But what's good about this, what's really interesting about the study also, is that we will use a technique that's called transcranial brain stimulation. This is a method that, so it's non-invasive. Basically, we use a magnetic field, and we have a little coil. It's about that big. And we put it on the head of a person, and it stimulates the brain underneath it. It's not painful, and it doesn't have any negative effects, unlike medication. What it can do, though, is it can bolster the effects of an intervention. So it's now used in combination to many different kinds of intervention. For example, it's used for the treatment of depression. It is used for the treatment of aphasia, mostly experimentally at this point in terms of aphasia, but it's used for dementia. It's used in many different contexts. It sort of helps the brain reorganizes itself. And so what we want to do in this project is we want to combine that. So basically, we'll stimulate the brain to sort of give it a little bit of a hand, like bolster its ability for plasticity, and apply the intervention as well, and see if those people that get the combination of the stimulation and the intervention recover better from aphasia and apraxia.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
At this point, I would like to interrupt you a moment. We have Gina Donaldson. She says, great to hear that your students are getting exposed to older people.
Yeah.
Should help with ageism. Yeah, and you already described that.
Yeah.
No, it's very true. I think there's nobody that comes through my lab that suffers from this. They really learn to interact with older people, and they like it. Some of them had never done it before. I never had, well, I guess I had theoretically, but I never met my grandparents. So when I started working with aging, I wasn't familiar even with interacting with older people because I had none in my life. And that's been a really rewarding experience. The difference between the young and the older people that come to the lab is that the older people are more patient. They're not in a hurry. It's not because they're not busy. It feels like it's more because they are more in the present. So in the present, they are in the lab, and so they will do everything they have in the best way that they can, not looking at their watch and wanting to leave soon, not to miss the next appointment. So it is fun. It's very different. And when we do brain stimulation with the older people, at first I was scared. I thought that they were more fragile, that maybe they would experience it in a more negative way. And it was the absolute opposite. The older people were a lot more tolerant and patient, and they were like, many of them said that they've been through so much worse in their life. But it was just this feeling that they were not in a hurry. and again, I want to emphasize the fact that it's not because they have nothing to do. They do have very busy lives, but they seem to experience time in a different way.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. That's really true. It's what I can consent to. Yeah,
that's good. So So I know that the students, they love also working with older people.
That's fine. And there is another comment from Ray Carr. He said, I have a good friend with Parkinson's. Should I recommend he consider singing in a choir?
Yes, I would think so. I mean, the studies are not all completely conclusive, but there is definitely no downside of trying it. It may not work on everything, but it will not hurt for sure. And it can certainly help with the voice, at least.
Yeah, and I would add, go to a choir with a good director who is not saying, oh, you cannot sing, go out. No, then you are done, you know?
I don't know from which country this person is. I know here.
From Canada.
Oh, from Canada. So they can go to the patient associations, that if there is a choir for patients, they will know of it in their region, so that they can recommend some choirs where people will be accepted even if they have a speech impairment, like in Parkinson's disease.
This is great. I know you wanted to show us some
the slide. I can show you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna screen share the slide. Okay, do you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so with the thing that I wanted to show you, mostly it's the middle graph. Let me see. Oh, do you see my my mouse?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, this is one of the results from our previous study. So basically, this is a schematic of voice stability, or actually more precisely, voice instability. So basically, what we want is our voice to be stable, and that sounds more nicely. It's perceived more positively by people. And what you can see in the graph is the relationship between instability, measured on the on the left, and age at the bottom. And you can see that for the frequent singer, that's the black line, there's almost no relationship. So basically, instability does not increase with age. For people that sing, but only rarely, you see the big difference is that instability increases a lot with age. And for people who don't sing, the non-singers, you see that instability increases even more so. So you can see that there's a benefit to singing on voice instability or stability in this graph. So this is from our study that we published last year. And the graph on the right end, that's it's a preliminary result from the study that I've been talking about a lot today. So basically, what you see is the results for a verbal working memory task. So this is a task where we ask people to remember letters that they were presented just a few seconds ago. And this is interesting because you see that the non-singer, this is I don't know if you see correctly, the pink. I'm going to zoom in.
The red line.
Red line, it looks red, yeah.
So the red line, so basically the non-singers, they become a lot more slow at doing this. So they're struggling to do the verbal working memory task. And you see that the singers, the bar is less steep, which means that the increase with age in difficulty is reduced. So this is interesting because this is what I was talking about in terms of looking at how singing can have an impact not only on voice, which you see here in the middle, but also on cognition, which you see on the other graph. And so that's very interesting. So we really want to go into more of this to try to understand exactly what are the effects of singing on the different abilities, like those two.
Well, those are dramatic.
Yes. I would also be interested in the instability of pitch, which you showed. Can you say
well, this was only to introduce the idea that with age, there's a change in the instability in terms of pitch and intensity. And so these were results for non-singers. And so you could see that with age, instability in the pitch and the intensity domain became higher. in the third graph I removed. So basically that was to show that we know a lot about the aging voice, and now what we want to know about is the aging singing voice, which we know a lot less about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of these changes are very, very interesting and very strong.
This is my intuition, which I had, is now on a graph.
It's always good when our intuition becomes a graph.
Yeah.
I love it when science confirms what I believe.
Yeah, me too.
So now we have to have him sing, you know.
What?
Because I tried once to give him some lessons because his voice is quite unstable, but also for other reasons, because he had an operation, a surgery there.
Oh.
So, but he is not so much in that.
Man.
Maybe she can convince you.
Well, you know, if I weren't married to you, perhaps it would work.
Is this a proposition?
I can't do that. I'm sorry.
Excuses.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
no worries. But we think that by like doing science, and maybe to some people that sounds like it's very precise, it may not be important to know exactly what singing does, but if you think about it in terms of prevention or rehabilitation, we really need to know, for example, if a person has a problem with his voice, that it's more unstable, and another person has a problem with their voice, that the quality is reduced. It may be that they don't need the same intervention, right, for their specific symptom. So we really need to know exactly what type of singing, what amount of singing, and what kind of singing will have specific impacts, and then we can target, people's symptom. And I say symptoms, that sounds like a pathology, but it's also true for just aging, even though aging isn't a disease, but it is associated with certain things that people may not enjoy, especially on the voice and articulation. Some people become a lot slower. So is there a way to make their speech back to being faster again? Mm-hmm. Right? But we need to know what kind of singing can do that, if any, and for the voice as well.
You know what I would be interested, let's say, of a study over 10 years to see if you could do it every year, maybe the same people, and figure out how that develops. That would be wow.
That's also my hope. I have submitted a grant doing this in March. Hopefully we'll get funded, because this is what we want to do. We want to take our cohort of 130 singers that we have now, and we want to ask people to come back periodically every 3 to 5 years for different time, for maybe 10 years or so. That takes a lot of money. Currently, in many of the countries, including Canada, most of the research funds go to pathology, but not understanding normal aging. And this is sad, because to understand pathology, you also have to understand the normal brain and the normal behavior. So it's one of the problem that the challenge that we face right now is to make governments understand that understanding the normal brain and the normal human being.
And prevention.
Really exactly.
Prevention instead of curing, that is, it's really a sort of treating, a paradigm shift we need. And
exactly. No, because all people with aphasia and Parkinson's disease, for example, in addition to being to having a neurological disease, they're also older in general. So we need to know, what is normal at that age and what is normal if we want to develop interventions, right? So, and we need a lot more research on that too. Mm-hmm. But that's called basic research, and it's a little bit harder to get funding for this. But hopefully that will change.
Basic research should be basic.
Yes, it should.
Okay, we are at the end of the hour, and it was really fun to talk with you and to learn something more. And I really would like to be there and participate.
That would be great.
Because my singing is sort of stopped now, because I don't teach anymore, and I don't have the choir anymore. And I somehow want to connect it with what I'm doing. So
That would be great to have you if you come to Canada.
Here we go to Canada. Who knows? Anyway,
I would recommend coming in May and not in April because, like I said, it was snowing this morning. Eventually, I promise it does snow. It does not stop, but
yeah. So I would like to ask you: is there still something what you haven't mentioned yet, and what you find very essential to still say?
I think we really very much covered it.
Okay, good.
And I would no, I think can't think of anything more.
Do you have a question?
You know, she talks so fast.
That's right.
And we have Gina in the audience. She says that the chart is very impressive on the voice stability and memory. And really, that's my big takeaway, that you have found out what I just only thought. So thank you very, very, very much.
That's really my takeaway too. Dramatic changes that you witness between singers and non-singers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some of them are very important. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Let us know next year or whenever when your studies go ahead and we come
more results. Okay. Yeah, that would be great. I will let you know.
More charts. More charts.
More positive results.
Yes,
positive
exactly.
Results. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you everybody, also to the audience, the live audience, and also who will watch that later.
Yeah.
And check out the website of Pascale, www.speechneurolab.ca.
Neuro, yes.
Neuro, you say it better. He can say that better. I don't really speak English very well, so. Okay, check it out and come back next week.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Pascale.